Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to A Talk with Griselda Live. I am Katrina Clemons, and I am the author's daughter, her only daughter, Katrina. So welcome today to our Zoom session featuring Griselda Houseworth Clemons. She is the author of The Girl with the Iron Leg. And today's event, we're going to discuss some of the themes and messages from Griselda's book and how they relate to our personal growth and resilience. And we'll also have a Q&A session with the author later on. And we'll have questions and also just about her writing process, her inspirations, et cetera, everything related to her book. We thank you for joining us today. We thank Creatives Everywhere Collective for their support and for sponsoring this online event. And of course, we want to thank you for participating because today is Juneteenth. So how awesome is that? So again, thank you. So the agenda today, I'll start off with a brief introduction of our author, and then she will share her thoughts and some items that she has prepared for today's session, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. So with that said, let me introduce the author, my mother, Griselda Houseworth Clemons. So Griselda's experiences, her book is about her experience with polio as a child and facing racial challenges as well as a result of the Jim Crow laws. And it's a testament to her personal growth and resilience. You know, there's not, I think her book is the only book out there where this is the Black experience with polio. And so we'll get into that a little later, but I just want to throw that out there about the premise of this book and how her story is the only one at this time. But despite these challenges, she was able to live a full life. She's an accomplished author. She's inspiring others to overcome their own challenges. And so this story is just a powerful reminder of the strength and perseverance that we all possess and how we can use these qualities to overcome adversity and achieve our own goals. If you have not read The Girl with the Iron Leg, we hope that you will make time to read it. It is an extraordinary story. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Griselda Houseworth Clemons to introduce herself and share her thoughts for today for our online session.
Thank you, daughter. Thank you, Katrina. I appreciate that wonderful introduction. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to my first live chat. Many of you have called me and let me know how much you enjoyed the book, and you had many questions that I was able to answer. However, there were many of you who had many other questions as well. And I just thought, why not have a place where we can all get together and ask our questions and share them with more than just me, but with other people as well. Because who knows, you might be wanting to ask the same question as somebody else. Writing a book is not an easy task, number one, as I found out. But God, in his infinite wisdom, sent Kendra Anderson of K-Law Productions and Tanya Stevenson from Compassionate Design Publishing to my doorstep to direct my path for writing this book. And then Tanya selected Yvonne Medley, an editor extraordinaire. If you ever met her, you know what I meant, to complement my writing style, whatever that is. I don't know what my writing style is, but everyone seems to think that I have a style. Then next, my daughter, Katrina, introduced me to Creatives Everywhere Collective. Now, the organization presenting this live production tonight, it's great to be a part of this wonderful organization. And I am proud to be a member of Creatives Everywhere Collective. And it's amazing to have such an awful team, not an awful team, but an awesome team. I have to correct that immediately. Such an awesome team working with me. I can't believe how blessed I am. But working with Yvonne, my editor, and that was so important, I discovered what was and what was not acceptable. I just thought you wrote. I didn't know that you had to be careful about this and careful about that. But I learned about the copyright laws and public domain. And there is a big difference between the two. And she checked everything that I included in my writing. Well, where did this come from? Where did that come from? Well, let me check it. I mean, we checked everything. And I had to relearn everything about grammar and punctuation and nouns and verbs. And I was so glad I had wonderful English teachers because Yvonne and I were on the same page. All she had to do was direct me and show me what was needed, and I would just follow it. And so we had a good time together. And another thing, I had to become, at 80 years old, computer literate. Can you believe that? I had to learn how to work in Word, and Word has tools and Word has words and functions. I had to learn how to actually use my little iPad. Nobody believes that I wrote a book using an iPad, but I did. And over the time with Yvonne, my writing became stronger and tighter as the weeks and the months flew by. And the results opened up a brand new world for me, especially in the literary world. People were beginning to ask me, how does it feel to be a writer? How does it feel to be an author? At the time, I didn't know because I never thought about it that way. I was just writing and I wanted to complete this book. But at any rate, now your comments, those of you who are out there, because of your comments and your reviews on Amazon, I have to claim at this point that I am a writer. Don't feel that I'm an author yet, but I am a writer, a beginning one, but a writer nevertheless. Well, little G is gone, and now it's time for Big G. Big G is the teenager, and after the teenager is Miss G, and that would be me. And I'm the advocate for little G and Big G. You've been asking for a second novel. Well, think about January. Think about January with that one coming out. I've always liked to write. I started writing at a very early age because no one listened to me as a child. And in fact, I've heard that said by many other polio, I don't want to say polio patients, other polio people who have had polio, that nobody listened to them when they were young. Nobody wanted you to talk about polio. You were supposed to suck it up, whatever was wrong. And so nothing was said. The little kid never had a chance to say, well, this hurts or that hurts, or help me with this, help me with that. No, that was not allowed. And that was not very good. That was not a good experience because it taught you to keep your feelings to yourself because nobody cared about them. They didn't want to be bothered with that. And then too, having polio was made you an outcast in the community. Well, at least in the Black community. I can't speak for the white community, but in the Black community, it sort of made you an outcast because the parents didn't know that much about it and they didn't want their children catching it. And so they would tell their children to stay away from that child and you can't play with that child. So it was a very lonely time growing up and going to school. There weren't that many advantages for children with a disability. For example, the steps. I was always knocked down the steps during fire drill. That just goes without saying. And no provision was made for that. Also in school, no provisions were made for little, I'm having problems right now with certain words, but when you take children on a field trip, that's the word for it. That's what happens, people, I'm sorry. But when you were taking children on walking field trips, no, nothing was provided for the child who could not take that trip. In my book, you will find out that I was left behind in a classroom. They walked out of that room together in a line and they turned off the lights and they went down the steps and they were gone on the field trip. And they left me in that darkened room alone. And that had to be changed as the years went by. I know that with the Americans with Disabilities Act, a lot of that changed over the years, wherein we know about the aprons in the streets. You don't have to step up on the sidewalk anymore. Buses have steps that can be lowered so that you can get on the bus easily with a cane or a walker or whatnot. So many avenues have been traveled in that direction. In the school where I taught, it was really wonderful teaching in that school because we had children with all kinds of disabilities. Other schools didn't have the population that we had. And so we had blind students who had to walk with canes, white canes, and children being children, they would take those children and spin them around so that they wouldn't know where they were going. That's what children do. Of course, if a teacher saw that, you would go out and turn the child back in the direction that he was supposed to be going. And we had children with spina bifida. Those are the little children who aren't going to grow any taller than maybe 2 or 3 feet. And that's as tall as they're going to get, and they would be in wheelchairs. And the children would come up behind them and take them and zoom them down the hall real fast and stop. Just to let you know that just because you had a disability in my building, that did not mean that you weren't treated like you were a regular person, because that's what they would have done to a regular person. So it made the kids feel that they were accepted. Along the way, I had to make a lot of adjustments because I had to decide what is it that I can do and what is it that I cannot do. And so as a child, this is what I did. I tried skates, fell down. I said, well, skates are off the list. I went down the list of different games and activities that children participated in. So skates were not for me. Tried to play badminton. Badminton was not for me. Tennis was not for me. Baseball was not. I could just keep on going down the line, but I tried all of that until I discovered that I can swim. So I am a swimmer. I learned that I could I could go bowling. And that's because someone taught me that those little dots across the front of the bowling lane, those are spots that you use to throw the ball to knock the pins down. So if you stand in the middle, your ball is probably going to curve to the left. And if you use the little pin, the little circle on the left, well, so forth and so on, So I learned my spot and I became a pretty good bowler. And that was another sport that I was able to enjoy. But on the other hand, I spent a lot of time alone. So I learned how to be alone. And therefore, I am my own best company. I mean, I enjoy being with people, but I can also be alone. Let's see. I was wondering, I wondered about other children and their siblings, because in my household, I had a brother. He is deceased, but we grew up together, and I just wondered what happened to him when I was in the hospital all of those months. He was only 5 years old, and we had been together since his birth. So I just wondered what happened to him. He was in a household with adults and teenagers. He's 5. So who does he play with? That's just something that came to my mind. Because in thinking about the children who have polio, you also have to think about the family and the changes that they have to go through. And statistics have proven that normally when there's a child or children with disabilities in a family, that they are 9 times out of 10 likely to get a divorce, because one parent feels that they didn't sign on for that. And it is an added expense. There's a lot of time invested in that child. And in my case, my mother was my caretaker, because my mother and my father were divorced. And so now I was in a single family home, and she had to work very hard. And the two of us, my brother and I, we raised ourselves for the most part. But we grew up during the time when your neighbors could spank you. Your neighbors could tell on you when your parents came home. So you never got away with anything. And as a matter of fact, my doctor told my mother that there was nothing wrong with me when I was dismissed from the hospital. He said, she just has polio. There is nothing wrong with her. If she needs to be spanked, spank her. And I thought he was the best doctor in the world until he said that. He gave her permission. And he said, don't do anything for her that she can do for herself. And my people took that to heart. No one did anything for me that I could do for myself. So I became a very independent. I became a very independent child, and I grew into a very independent adult. High school, well, that's another story. Don't have to go there. That's not in book 1. But another point was that when I wasn't diagnosed with polio until I went to the hospital. But in the interim, 3 Black doctors had been called to come to the house to examine me and see what was wrong. And not one of them said anything about polio, the 3 different doctors. And that was in a period of, I'm going to say 2 weeks. I saw 3 different doctors, and I decided at that age that I was not going to ever have a Black doctor again. You know, when I grow up, I'm not going to have a Black doctor because they couldn't answer my question. They said that I had a fever, the upset stomach, and to drink ginger ale and eat, we call them soda crackers. But soda crackers is nothing but saltine crackers. But in Georgia, we call them soda crackers at that time. They're saltines now in Georgia. But at any rate, I said, well, why can't I walk? And they had no answer. You know, okay, I have a headache, I have a stomach, well, why can't I walk? So I learned why I couldn't walk when I went to the hospital. And had to stay there and go through rehabilitation. And that was okay. But I feel that I've been very blessed to have lived the life that I've lived because I learned a lot along the way. And because I learned to be resilient and I learned to always try to find a way because no one would help me. So I was always saying, how can I do this? How can I do that? How can I do this? How can I do that? And I was always good at that and asking questions and making decisions at that time. So I was really thoughtful about children, Black children with polio when I wrote this book. I was thinking mostly about them because as I was going to the clinics and I was in the hospital and rehabilitation and in school and whatnot, I'm looking for the Black children. Am I the only person who had polio? Am I the only Black person in the world that had polio? That's all I saw, me, until I reached high school. And that's when I met 3 other students who had polio. But their story was totally different from mine because I was the only one in braces and I was the only one on crutches. They were walking naturally. And that's another story. But I wanted to find the other polio victims, for lack of a better word. They're out there somewhere, and I thought if I write this book, perhaps one of them will see it and decide to write their story. And then someone will see their book, and then another one will decide to write their story. There must be hundreds and hundreds of stories out there that nobody knows about because there aren't no records were kept because polio was considered a white person's disease. And it was said for a long time that Black people didn't get polio. So it was a white disease, but it turned out not to be the case because we kept popping up in different parts of the United States. You know, here's one. And also it was during the time of Jim Crow, which was segregation, separate but equal. But of course, that was never the case. Never the case. And most of the children in the South didn't receive, most of the Black children in the South did not receive the treatment that they should have because it just wasn't there for them. I was in a big city, Atlanta, and Grady Hospital was there. And so it was connected to Emory University. And they had they had doctors there for that who were very well up on that, the results of polio. And so they were able to help the children who were able to get to Atlanta. Most of the patients that I met came from Tennessee, North Carolina, Virginia. I mean, they were in Georgia because they found a place where their children could go. And that's my take on the reason why I wrote the book. Number one, little G wrote the book because she wanted to tell her story. And Miss G, that's me. And Miss G helped her get her story told because she wrote it. If you read it, you will have discovered that it was written in a child's language because those were her words. I started writing about my experience, my journey, when I was maybe 15, 16. I was very young and I held on to those papers. I still have them in her handwriting. And what I did, I started converting them. I started retyping a lot because the papers were getting faded and whatnot. But my journey has been long and it's still moving right along because I'm here and I'm still writing. And you'll be surprised when you get to book 2. But I thank you very much for having read book 1. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mom. First and foremost, no, that was good.
Thank you.
Very good. So it looks like we're going to start our Q&A right now. I thought I saw 2 questions already in the chat.
Oh, wonderful.
So I think we'll start there. All right, so the first question that is here says, what did you learn when writing the book?
What did I learn when writing the book? Oh my. I learned that a book doesn't write itself. I had to do research just to make sure that I was stating facts. I had to use the thesaurus all the time. I had to use the dictionary to make sure. And I mentioned before about those verbs agreeing with the subjects. And I learned the mechanics of writing a novel. I learned that you can't fool people. And so you have to know who your audience is when you're writing. And so once I decided on who my audience was going to be, then I was able to direct the book into their path.
Okay. Well, then that is a good segue to the next question, which says, what did you learn about yourself through writing the book?
What did I learn about myself?
Yeah, and it says, and do you think it changed you?
Wow. Let's see.
What did you learn about yourself when writing your book? And how did it change you?
What did I learn? Oh boy, I learned that I have a great sense of humor because it shows up in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. If you look at the titles of some of those chapters,
Right.
people have been talking to me and they can quote the title of the chapter that they like best. You know, I really like them damn ducks. I really like that one.
Rotisserie girl.
Rotisserie girl. Oh, look, see you too. And there were others who liked jumping on the bed. Jumping on the bed. I think, yeah, that was one, jumping on the bed. And other young girls who grew up, young ladies who grew up in the South, remember having tea parties. Mm-hmm. But they said they were poorer than I was because they didn't have any tea sets.
Okay.
Yeah. What they used was saltine cracker boxes, and they would tear them and make their own plates.
Everybody has a story.
Cardboard, that's right.
That's right.
Got that box apart. So
I mean, do you think the book changed you?
Did my book change me? Yes, it did.
Okay.
Yes, it did. It has changed me a lot in that I have a better sense of self, and it helped me with my my self-confidence, because I have been losing that since I retired, and I didn't know if I had anything to offer to the community or to the universe, so to speak, because I had done all that I knew how to do, and that was teach, and did that for 50 years. And after that, what? There was nothing left. And then I started writing the book, and here I am getting ready to write book 2 and book 3.
I know.
So I plan to be here for a while.
Okay. Well, let's see. Oh boy, the questions. It says, what does the title mean?
Oh, I think you can help us with that, Katrina.
No, you tell it.
No, you tell
it. What does it mean to you?
Well, the story behind the title of the book is that when Katrina was in the 5th grade, she had to write a composition for her class. I don't know what the title, what the theme was supposed to have been, but she wrote about me, and her title was The Girl with the Iron Leg. And I never forgot that. And I tried to get her to give me the copy because I was going to keep it forever. But somehow it got lost. It never to be found. But I kept the title in my head. I didn't have to have that on writing. But Katrina is responsible for the title, The Girl with the Iron Leg. That's why I asked Katrina to tell us about that.
All right, so our next question says, do you think the civil rights movements did enough to advocate for the rights of Black persons with disabilities?
Okay, do I think the civil rights
did enough to advocate for Black people with disabilities?
No, I don't. It's still about the same. We've come a very long way, that's for sure. We have a lot of resources and there are many places that will provide help for children with disabilities, even adults with disabilities. And I, 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 I can only think about myself. I wish I knew more to share with you, because I know that there are blind students, there are deaf students, there are those who are amputees, who were born without limbs. There are just so many. And what I discovered along the way is that disabilities is big business, like everything else. When I was trying to buy my first car, my first van, so that I could put the lift in it to pick my scooter up and put it into the van by remote control, I was told that if what I was diagnosed with showed up in the first 20 diseases, that I could get 20% off on the purchase of my car. So polio was not even in the first 10. Polio was not in the first 20. The guy said, well, now, if you had, oh gosh, what does Bernita have?
MS.
Yes. He said, if you had MS, we could give you 20% off. Or if you had, there were 2 or 3 that I remember the names of. Yeah, I could get 20% off, but I didn't show up in the first 20.
Wow.
Why?
Right. Well, like the answer to the question was no, and we've made some progress, but still a long way to go. And still, I mean, you bought that van quite some time ago, and
I did.
that shouldn't have even been an issue. It should just been automatic. It's something that you needed, and that's just, you needed it. So,
no.
Wow. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We do have another question. It says, I want to make sure we get all the questions. It says, what is your favorite part of the writing process and why?
Oh, my favorite part of the writing process is the writing itself, the creativity, the mind streaming the thoughts through your arm into your hand and your fingers on the keys. Because when I write, I can't just sit down and write. I have to have this urge to write, this need to write. And when that happens, I just sit down and my fingers just fly across the keys. I'm not thinking about what I'm writing. I'm just typing until I finish. And when everything runs out, I'm exhausted and I have nothing left. I like that. And I like going back over it and making corrections also. That's the teacher in me.
Yes.
I really enjoy that so much.
Well, thank you. I don't know if we have any more questions. Let me just double check. Someone says, tell us the story about how you tried smoking and what you thought smoking contributed to your condition.
Whoa.
Wow.
Okay. Well, I was normal. And so many children try smoking at one time or another. And we had smoked before it was suggested that we smoke in the chimney. Because cigarettes would be lying around the house, and we would sneak one. My mother smoked Lucky Strikes. No filter, just like Pall Mall, no filter. And so when they suggested that we get cigarettes, oh, okay, let's get cigarettes. And smoking was just taboo. And all children want to do what they're not supposed to do. And so okay, so we smoked. Did it have any contribution to my condition? No, not at all. Mm-hmm. I know that if you smoke, it's going to make you sick. It makes a lot of kids throw up and stomach ache and all of that. And so that's your punishment for smoking. Feeling bad. Okay. Just like drinking. That's what I think.
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you for that. Let's see. Let me just double check here, see if we have any more in the chat. I do have a question for you. It would be, what advice would you give to someone facing adversity or struggling to find resilience?
Will you say that again, please?
What advice would you give to someone facing adversity or struggling to find resilience? I just think about, you were 7 years old, mm-hmm. You're a child, and just having to, be strong, be courageous, to tough it up, like you said, and just really do the work and do the work to walk again, to follow the directions from the doctors, to fight through the pain and the frustration and not knowing and everything. So it's just like, what? And it wasn't just at 7, you've done that for quite some time. With someone with a disability, like you said, in the classroom, you pushing kids down the hall, it's fun, but it's not. To someone with a disability, not able to, they're a little vulnerable. There's some vulnerability there because of things they can and cannot do. So what would be your advice to someone facing adversity or struggling to find resilience?
Thank you for that answer, Katrina.
Have I answered the question too?
You answered the question too. I appreciate that so much. You did a great job.
Oh, wow.
I would just like to say that, first of all, you have to face your fears. That's number one. What are your fears? And talk to somebody and get those, get answers to those questions that you have about whatever it is that you're going through. How do you get that resilience? You only have, you have yourself to depend on. And I don't know how religious the person might be, but that's another place that you can go. You can lean on your belief system. And I feel that, one, you have to accept whatever it is that's going wrong or that is wrong. You can't play around with it and say and gloss over it or pretend it doesn't exist. You have to accept it and then find out what it is that you need to do to overcome it. And commit yourself to that, but make sure that you're doing something that's comfortable for you and not accept something that's comfortable for somebody else. Because in the long run, you're the one who's going to go through it.
Right.
And not anybody else. That's what I would say.
All right. Well, I'm going to look at our Q&A just one last time. All right. Oh, we do have another question. It says, can you talk about the impact your aunts made on the impact of your diagnosis and care? I think we talked about Aunt Bert. Can you talk about the impact your aunts made on the impact of your diagnosis and care?
Okay, I thought you were getting ready to answer. That's
No.
why I sat back.
No.
Okay. My Aunt Ola was my mother's sister who lived in Atlanta, and we always visited her in the summer. My brother and I, we go up for a week or two, probably 2 weeks. It only costs, I think it was 75 cents one way on the train, or maybe, about 75 cents one way on the train. So it wasn't that expensive to travel from Macon, Georgia to Atlanta. And Ola did the best that she could when I began to show signs of having polio. She called the doctors, and she paid for them also. And she did what they told her to do.
Okay.
And so that was the best that she could do, that she knew how to do. But
okay.
in the meantime, my Aunt Bertha, who lived in Anniston, Alabama, she was reading the paper and keeping up with the news, the radio about what was happening. And she was thinking, that child has polio, according to what they're saying on the news and whatnot. Mm-hmm. Well, with Aunt Ola, she worked so hard. She worked in people's houses. So she'd get up early in the morning, get on that bus, and go way, way somewhere into the land where the white people lived to clean their houses. And then when she got home in the evening, it was time for dinner. And, riding the bus and walking and all of that, she was tired. So I guess she was not reading the paper, and she didn't have time to listen to the radio. So she was always trying to get a nap here and a nap there.
So I guess let's talk about Aunt Bert. Let's talk about Aunt Bert, because we're looking at our Q&A and our time. I want to be mindful of our time too. So.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. I just wanted to make sure that I talked about Aunt Ola and the fact that she let us live in her house, with her family rather. Mm-hmm. And she took care of us. Now, Bertha was coming from Anniston, Alabama, and all she did was arrive on the scene in a cab, came into the house, said, "Where is she?" "No, don't have time for any coffee." I have a cab out here, and it's running. The meter is ticking. And she just came and got me and took me to the hospital. And everybody went. And because of both of them, my mother's older sisters, I didn't have a greater case of polio than I have.
Right.
if I had waited longer, it could have affected my arms. It could have affected my lungs, my spine, who knows, my other leg. But as it was, it just affected the one leg.
Okay.
So I'm very thankful to Aunt Ola and to Aunt Bertha.
Right.
For their help. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for your time. I do want to be mindful of our time. It is 7:23. We are concluding right now. I think we answered all the questions in the chat. So I just hope that this session was informative and inspiring for everyone involved, and that this story is just a reminder of the strength and resilience that we all have. Even if we don't know it, just as you explained, you have to be committed to that and accept the reality of whatever cards are dealt. We can use these qualities to overcome anything and achieve our goals. I certainly want to remind everyone that book 1 is still available. It's on Amazon, and it's The Girl with the Iron Leg. It's available at your local bookstores or online. And I want to thank you again, my mother, Griselda Houseworth Clemons.
Thank you,
for sharing your story. And just sharing with your story and insights with us today. Everyone, all the participants who joined us, thank you so much. Of course, Creatives Everywhere Collective, we appreciate this platform that you provided to us. And we just want everyone to have a great evening. Enjoy the rest of Juneteenth. Take care. And this can be viewed on Creatives Everywhere Collective on, it's a YouTube channel. So just keep that in mind. You can see this again. So thank you, everyone. Have a good evening and good night.
Good night.